What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the podcast. Hope you're all doing well. I am your host, Justin Harold, and with me, as always, my co-host, Jeff Santa. This is the Cleveland Pulse Podcast, episode 40, and we are getting into one of my favorite topics. It's a little bit early, but it's one of my favorite topics. It's the free agent and draft prospect list that me and Jeff have come up with 5 names for. Each of them are, who we specifically want. We haven't really touched base with each other about who the other has said. So we'll give a little bit of our own, perspective and why we want them. But we'll start off with our draft prospects first and then go into free agents, considering that free agency happens before the draft, and we'll get into the draft a little bit more after free agency starts. So, but besides that, Jeff, how you doing, my guy?
Good. It's been a long time no talk.
Yeah.
Dude is boring. Browns off season. It's like the best time of the year. Now it's like the most boring. Cavs back in tank mode, it seems like, or they're just not playing. They just couldn't sustain their play. Indians, snooze fest. But
did you get the email for your opinion on what the new name change should be? Or
no,
I got the survey.
It.
Yeah.
Wait, there's a survey? Okay.
It was some sort of survey. I filled it out. It's like it has like multiple questions. It's not just like, hey, what do you think should be a team name? It asks you all these different. Would you like to keep the current jersey colors and all this other stuff? So,
wow.
But it was a whole thing. But yeah, the Cavs. This is the hard part of their schedule. I looked at it, and it's a bunch of teams from the West and. A lot of
there's just really not anything
teams
to talk about in like the NBA regular season. Like honestly,
No.
like if they are lucky enough to make it to the postseason, like that'll be a fun podcast. But like that's
Absolutely.
just how sad like the NBA regular season kind of is. It's kind of boring. And this NFL
you have a James Harden trade.
Yeah, but I mean that happens all the time in the NBA. Free agency in the NBA is bigger than the actual regular season. But this NFL offseason is weird.
Did you like the Super Bowl? Because I loved it.
No, it was boring.
I loved it, but yeah, you're right.
Boring.
It was pretty boring for the most part, but I had my fun with it. So, but
I think you and me can agree that this offseason is like we don't like. I feel like all the good players all the great players are going to be gone by the time we draft. Like our pick in the draft, and then there's like mid-tier free agents.
Yeah.
That we could overpay probably.
That's probably going to be the big. Well, I realized we don't actually have as much money as I thought in cap space than we usually do. I don't know. I truly don't know. And
we had a lot from last year.
Right. And the problem with that is now, there's going to be consideration about, are we going to cut certain players? I know Sheldon Richardson is one of those players that, he's going to make. He could be cut for $11 million that we could use to sign, bring back Larry Ogunjobi for half that price or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I know that my top guy is the only person that I would throw a blank check at in free agency. But before we get to that, the draft, one of my, favorite things that I usually try to cover and I try to talk about.
It's in Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland. Probably going to be virtual though. Super unfortunate, but it is what it is. They'll probably let like a few people in, but this is this is like the thing I take a lot of pride in when it comes to doing research and doing film and tape watch. What you'll find out about my list is a lot of the guys that I pick are usually later round picks. I find that it's more intriguing to have guys picked out in the later rounds than it is in the first round because, people fly off the board. Some people jump the board, and it just kind of gets into that prospect of like, well, you want to have this guy, but he might not be there. Or, you're thinking one way and you end up going another. So, but besides that, Jeff, what were you thinking about when making your list for draft prospects?
So this offseason is, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's not easy. It's not easy for any team. There's a chance for you to mess up, your offseason, but it's like I think it's simple. It's a simple structure. We just need defenders. We literally need guys on the defensive side of the ball. We don't need to be doing anything on the offensive side of the ball. If we sign somebody offensively in free agency, even though that's, the the second half of this shorter episode. But even if it'll just be like a big red flag to me. I don't know why. So I'm looking linebacker in the draft. That's basically it. There's a couple of them. I know we talked a little bit. My top guy is Azeez Ojulari, Georgia linebacker, kind of a hybrid, kind of like just an all-around defensive weapon, just a guy I think that would fit right in with this team. He's probably my most realistic pick. I like Christian Barmore. Don't think he's going to be there. I like anybody from Alabama. That's really the truth. And I love Mike Parsons. He's definitely not going to be there.
Yeah, for me, I was the same exact way making my list. I also had Browning, or not Browning, the guy from the D tackle from Alabama on my list before. He was the one guy that me and you briefly talked about before the podcast started. So I changed him. He was at my number 4 spot. But for me, my list is just stacked with linebackers, and for the most part, they're guys that hopefully can come in and be. When you play in a division and a conference where you have to go out and that the road to the Super Bowl leads through Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and someone's got to cover Travis Kelce because it can't be Denzel Ward.
And just mobile quarterbacks, just like a fat dude. Imagine just like a top tier, like close to a 4-4 linebacker. That's probably not even possible, but I mean, we haven't seen combine, but anybody who's going to get contain Lamar, and Mahomes is pretty mobile too when healthy.
Yeah. So my number 5 guy, Joseph Ossai from Texas. Is he Texas? Yeah, Texas. He's a linebacker / outside edge rusher. Edge rushers fly off the board really early. It's one of those positions in the draft where one gets drafted and they all start coming off the board real quick. And so he's my number 5 guy, and he's the only DN / outside linebacker that I got in terms of an edge rusher to help out Myles Garrett on this list for right now. I wanted to try to have a little bit of a diverse kind of group. Number 4, I have OSU guy. He's a later round pick. Like I said, a lot of these guys that I'm going to have on this list are later round guys because I take a little bit more pride in knowing the gems in the later rounds, I guess you can call them. It depends on how you look at it and what you think about it. Baron Browning, I think he was one of the, better parts of our defense on Ohio State's defense. He just didn't play, the Buckeyes only played 6 games this season, including the playoffs and everything.
What about Tufts Borland?
No, not a chance.
What about Sean Wade?
No one outside of Baron Browning from OSU for me. There's a lot of talk about with how porous our defense was, but Baron Browning, I think, was a shining. I think he's a late 3rd round, early 4th round pick that you could get a lot of value out of. He could, essentially replace anyone on the Browns starting linebacker position right now, except for Jacob Phillips, even, maybe Mac Wilson. But, and then for my 3rd pick, so I can't pronounce this man's name. It's really just a funky name. It's Ifitu Milfuani, and it is crazy. He's a corner / safety from Syracuse. And the reason why I brought him up is he was getting a lot of praise at the Senior Bowl that took place about 2 to 3 weeks ago. He's 6'3". And I just think, tall corners, tall safeties, someone's going to cover Travis Kelce. Might as well be a dude who has speed and who has height. So those were my bottom 3 guys. Jeff, do you have anyone else before I keep going?
Honestly, I think there's silver lining here because I think like Jacob Phillips is probably besides Jacob Phillips, Grant Delpit was probably like the most anticipated person from last year's draft.
Right.
And he hasn't even played. So It's kind of like, obviously we didn't draft him this year, but it's like he's going to be a rookie. Yeah. So that could be a bad thing. He's probably not going to be He's going to be a rookie, but it's like, even if we don't have like an outstanding draft this year, we still have Grant Delpit. We still have Jacob Phillips. Like we have guys from last year. So just put the pieces together. But I'm curious about your top two.
Yeah, that's kind of how, once you get into the playoffs, once you become a playoff team, you want to stay consistent in where you're drafting and where you're getting guys. So you have to find the gems. I'm going to keep referring to them as gems in the rough. It's really hard for teams to go out there and draft. And I think, last year was good. I thought Jacob Phillips was one of those guys I had on my list. He was everyone was flipping out when, I forget the Ohio State linebacker that was picked after him from last year, but the Baltimore Ravens took him, and everyone was flipping out that we took Jacob Phillips before him. I personally think that Jacob Phillips is going to turn into a stud. He has sideline to sideline value at linebacker, and I think that's going to be absolutely needed. But my number two guy, another LSU linebacker, Jabril Cox. The story about Jabril Cox was he was an FCS player. So he played at North Dakota State University, Carson Wentz. There's another quarterback coming out of there. They consistently win their perspective.
Did Tony Romo go there?
I don't know. But that team,
Illinois.
Yeah, that North Dakota State team has won multiple championships. They're whatever their equivalent to the national championship is. He was a part of 3 championships. This Jabril Cox. He's 6'3" and 226 pounds. He also stood out at the Senior Bowl and is one of those late second round, early third round picks that I think the Browns should definitely, target depending on what they do with that first round pick of theirs. And then number one, and this is the only guy in the draft that I would be willing to trade up for a significant amount, and it's Jeremiah Owusu, the linebacker from Notre Dame. I'm sure, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast and watching it will probably see that name a lot often connected to the Browns. He's, in a weird spot. He played linebacker, but he also had 100+ snaps where he was in coverage. And I think he allowed 2 to 3 completions. He's a little bit undersized at linebacker, but now that the NFL is kind of transitioning between, safeties playing the linebacker spot, the outside linebacker spot, you kind of saw it with Carl Joseph. For example, he wasn't great in coverage, but you saw him play up a little bit. I think that's what Jeremiah Owusu would end up being. He's just, he won the linebacker, the award given the best college linebacker. And I just think that outside of Micah Parsons, he's easily the best linebacker that you can get. And I'm just going to keep making the point that with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill needing to be covered along with other guys on Kansas City, you're going to need someone to cover Travis Kelce. And I think he would be the man that you put on him. So that's my list. That's my top 5 guys. Obviously, we said we weren't going to get too much into it. But yeah, that's kind of what I have. We'll do more research later and maybe our list will change. Maybe we'll have more ideas. Maybe we'll do our own little, mock draft kind of. So
yeah, I like that.
I see kind of, Browns fans always said that in the past. Might as well continue the tradition just at a later spot in the draft. So, but moving on now.
I think free agency is even more interesting, like you said, though, like moving forward, is that because I don't know, you could hopefully if you have a first round pick, you're going to get someone who's good, but you can't control Grant Delpit, season and injury. You can't control stuff like that. You can't control people who are just not good in the NFL.
Greedy Williams being out for a whole season.
Right. But the free agency, that's the real 2-edged sword, because I really feel like we could overpay for some people, and I feel like we could just make our team 20-30% better by not spending a lot of money. It has to do with our current roster though. Mm-hmm. And I think that me and you could both agree. I hope that free agency, before anything else, we got to re-sign Rashard Higgins. We got to re-sign him.
Number 5 guy on my list.
Number 5.
He's number 5 because it should just be a no-brainer. It should just be a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's my one priority though. Everything I talk about in this part of it is assuming that he's re-signed. Yeah. Which I don't know what that does with our money, but All right. I think we all know where I want to go. I want for a song for low. I want JJ Watt. Final answer for very cheap,
Ooh.
very cheap. Maybe like medium cheap. I think he's injury prone. I think he's still got in him a lot in him. I think he'd like playing his brother 2 times out of the year, and I think he wants to play for a team where the fans really care. Like I think, and like the locker room really cares. So I think that's a good start.
JJ Watt is an interesting choice. See, the reason why I would, and I thought you would be against it, but I think JJ Watt's an excellent choice. The only problem is you got to get him off of the deal that he has right now. I think he has 1 year left.
Difficult.
You got to trade for him, and the only way Houston is trading him is if Deshaun Watson's gone, because then that's a wholesale for the Texans. But I like it. I mean, I would love to have someone on the opposite end that I know can produce pressure. And it's kind of like, JJ Watt's getting there up in age, and so is Olivier Vernon. But, when you play on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, you're going to be able to kind of have your way and be able to go the distance. So I like that. That's a good first one. Obviously, I said my number 5 guy was Rashard Higgins. It's just you saw the chemistry as soon as Baker came in year 1. Then year 2, Freddie Kitchens screws it up, have a bad year in general. Year 3, he doesn't get to play immediately because he's behind OBJ, Jarvis, and a game plan that's primarily run the first couple weeks. And then Odell goes out and Rashard Higgins comes in, and it looks like Baker Mayfield is franchise quarterback with Rashard Higgins being, his number 2 go-to guy. So don't know how much you're going to end up paying him. Probably not a lot because – he wanted to stay here, and I think he took almost less than $1 million to stay here for 1 more year. So we'll see. I hope he gets signed long-term to a smaller money kind of deal. But that being said, my number 4 guy is John Johnson III from the Rams, safety. He's pretty good. I think that we're going to let go of Carl Joseph and Andrew Sendejo, and I think you can get him. He's a good safety, so you might have to pay a little bit more. But knowing that Grant Delpit just came off of an injury, and you only have Ronnie Harrison and Sheldrick Redwine in tow, I think you're going to need an upgrade at safety, and I don't think you're going to do it in the draft. So that's my number 4 guy.
All right, I'm just going to start. I got thoughts twiddling around in my head because these are all guys that I want for and it sounds like kind of counterproductive because I feel like my thinking is very NBA oriented, and what I mean is I kind of want old guys with experience, but that doesn't really always work in the NFL, especially if we could get old guys with experience fly for cheap, then that'll be good. I kind of want Richard Sherman. I kind of do. I don't want to pay a lot for him, but I don't want to pay a lot for anybody.
Saw the rumors, huh? I sent the rumors to you.
But I mean, where is he going to fit? Is Greedy going to play? That just seems like too much of a headache to me, but I'll keep him on my radar. Apparently Yannick Ngakoue is on people's radars. I guess he could be on the move again. Wouldn't mind him. I know your boy Levante David doesn't sound like Tampa Bay is going to move him, and I'm not paying him. He's 31. I'm not giving him big money. He's old.
He's my number 1 guy.
He's the same age as JJ Watt.
Jeff, but did you watch him in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, he's good, but he's in a good defense.
You're right, but he covered Travis Kelce all night. He looked so good.
But that's a guy that would leave Tampa Bay, and we would overpay him. I just know it. Would it be worth it? Maybe.
Comparison really quickly. He reminds me of, with you bringing that point up, he reminds me of the guy that we got from Jamie Collins when we got him from New England after he was Studley in New England.
Yeah, and then he sucked for us.
And then he went back to New England and was Studley again. Yeah, but I just watched him.
For us.
I watched
people
him.
Want to play for the Browns too.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you will get some of those guys. But man, Levante David is my number 1 dude. After watching him in the Super Bowl, my God, was he just
good?
He's just easily the best player that I could think of just throwing a blank check. He's the only guy I want to throw a blank check at. If he was the only guy we signed all off season, I'd be fine with it. But
he would just be so good for our linebacking core too. Like
right,
he
and
would
you talk
probably be
about the
worth
age.
it, but yeah, his experience would just go a long way. Mac Wilson and Jacob Phillips would probably all get 10 times better playing with him.
Right. And then it would be in a way that he'd be able to lead by example as well. Whereas BJ Goodson was, what everyone was saying was a culture guy and was kind of like the heart of that defense, but he really wasn't leading by example. He was just kind of being the mouthpiece in the middle. And Malcolm Smith, he won Super Bowl MVP, but like he was also one of those, must have been like a mouthpiece guy because he really wasn't producing on the field. But sticking with linebackers, because now we got enough of three of my guys. Another linebacker that I think is unfortunate because you're going to have to pay him a lot is Jayon Brown from Tennessee. So last year we took Jack Conklin from Tennessee. I think this year we continue the well.
Like doing business with us.
Yeah, I like doing business. I like taking their good players. Jayon Brown, very good in coverage, very studly. He's kind of like an older version or an already established version of what I think Jacob Phillips could be, but on the outside a little bit. Obviously he has more experience, and so he'd be able to come in and kind of lead by example. I just think that
is Anthony Harris your 3?
No, my second one, my two and one, Levante David, and my second one are guys that are more of kind of like me, kind of just dreaming because I know it's not really gonna happen.
Okay.
But they're like my most wanted players for reasons. Obviously, Levante David is just a stud. My number 2 is I've wanted him for like a long time, but he was pretty situated on the team that he's been on. But Jayon Brown, I think that's the one guy that you could realistically see the Browns paying a good handful of money. They lost Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey, and Christian Kirksey went out and ended up balling. And I think they regretted kind of letting both those guys go. I think linebacker will be a position that they attack pretty heavily in free agency and then in the draft. So do you have anyone else?
I got a sleeper. I have a sleeper, biggest sleeper around because we should be able to get him on a discount. I think wherever he goes is getting him on a discount, or they're overpaying for him just because of circumstances. But you got to pick up the phone and call Bud Dupree and his agent. You have to.
Oh.
You have to. He's coming off a major injury. He's kind of like OBJ. He really is. Different sides of the ball, but like everybody knows how studly they are. But they're both, they both could be on the move. I think OBJ could be on the move. I think Bud Dupree should be on the move.
Yeah, that team, I don't know that they're going to be able to pay him and TJ Watt. But man, I think the one thing that I found out last offseason that was interesting was the respect in which players held for their previous teams when it came to Tony Jefferson, safety from the Baltimore Ravens. I remember Grant Delpit goes down and questions were, all right, well, who are some safeties that we can go out and get? And Tony Jefferson took to Twitter and said, as much as, as they could be a good team or whatever, the rivalry between Baltimore and Cleveland is kind of like steady, and I'm not going to do that to my prior team. I don't know, but people are different. It's a money game out there, definitely in free agency. When we didn't want to pay Jadeveon Clowney last year. Obviously, he's far more injury prone than Bud Dupree and everything. But man, Bud Dupree, solid dude on the opposite side of a defensive player of the year candidate. So I'd be willing to pick up the phone. I just don't know that I'd be willing to throw the money like I would with Levante David. So, but that's a good one. I like that one. So my final pick, and it might come to like dismay or just utter dislike by everyone or you, but a player that I've wanted to trade straight up Joe Hayden for him, Patrick Peterson. Apparently the Cardinals are going to release him. They're going to part ways. And Patrick Peterson, he's up there in age. Don't know how much he's going to want is the problem.
Probably a lot.
Maybe he hasn't been playing to, just like Richard Sherman hasn't been playing to his usual Pro Bowl standards. But when you get up there in age and then you get put on the opposite side of an already studly corner like Denzel Ward, you start to see improvement in your own game, and you kind of get to relax a little bit more and make more plays. Patrick Peterson is just one of those dudes that I've always held really high respects for. He's kind of just like the opposite side of him, Larry Fitzgerald, where they play really hard for their franchise and they play really hard for their team. He's one of those guys, kind of like JJ Watt, that if you go out and get him, I think you're going to get a really culture guy, mouthpiece guy, and a follow by example or lead by example kind of guy. So Patrick Peterson's number 2, and obviously Levante David, number 1, just pure studs.
I think that's interesting because we didn't really talk about our 5. We kind of just set this up like a couple hours ago, like 6 or 7 hours ago, where we were going to talk about, and we both kind of picked guys who experience like veteran leaders that are going to be, good, as good, if not better, in the locker room, practice, walkthroughs, whatever, as they are on the field. So I think that's interesting that we both went down that route. Even if they are a little bit older, I think Patrick Peterson and Richard Sherman are basically the same idea.
So the only thing that I want to say about your Richard Sherman pick is just I don't know that I can get over the fact that last year we played them and he went out and just straight up lied about Baker not dapping him up. But like those guys, they're professionals, and Baker's gotten more professional, and I think Richard Sherman's a smart enough guy that they could bury the hatchet, and they don't really have to see each other that much. So or talk to each other that much. But when it comes to free agency, I think you gotta go a little bit older. That's why I was always on about getting Clay Matthews last year and throughout the whole season. Just kind of get those guys who have the experience. And Adrian Claiborne, I think, is one of those guys who is a great role player with age, has been to Super Bowls and such. You get those kind of guys that help you continue to build the mentality that you want this organization to move towards. And when they get up there in age, sometimes they take a little bit of a lower pay cut and want to just relax a little bit more. So, but yeah, I liked our list. I honestly think that, for what you said, we set it up like 6 to 7 hours ago. Pretty good, but obviously we'll, maybe get a little bit closer to the draft, a little bit closer to free agency, start to see some rumors build, and talk about it a little bit more.
I think either way you cut it, there's going to be new faces on the defensive side of Cleveland Browns football next year. I would really imagine that the offense is going to be the same exact people, but there's going to be hopefully new players in different jerseys at the peak of next season.
Absolutely. Last year's offseason was almost offensive heavy right away. Especially in the terms of playmaking positions, right tackle with, Jack Conklin. There's a lot of J's on our team. Jack Conklin, and then Austin Hooper at tight end, which we knew was going to be a big position coming into this season. So yeah, I think opposite this year, off season, defense is going to be the big position of need. Linebacker, if we see it right away, it's going to be good news. So, Jeff, you got anything else before we sign off?
Nope. I think we're in good agreement. We'll definitely circle back to this, though. Not the last time you'll be hearing us talk about this.
Absolutely. So, like Jeff was saying, it's kind of a slow season. When the Browns aren't playing, the season just ended. The Cavs are not in the greatest position that we left them off in. And in the Cleveland baseball team, whatever you want to call them, are sending surveys out to their fans to help them decide what their name should be. So we'll definitely keep on pumping out some episodes and ideas and everything, but we want to thank you guys for watching and listening, and we'll catch you back in the next one. Peace.